Hey, Falcons and NFL fans. Welcome to another episode of NFL's Jocks and Pigskins with Tom Pollen, Chris Smitherman producing behind the scenes. I'm Dave Holcomb, back after a week off. And, it was a good thing I got some rest last week because a lot has happened in the last 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
And we're going to try and get to all of it in the next hour, Tom. Just a crazy free agency period.
Oh, just wild.
And I think it gets crazier every year. I don't know. I tend to pay attention more every single year. So maybe that's why it seems crazier, but I don't know. I think it is getting crazier as well with all of these, just in the last 48 hours, even after the initial signings, all of the young quarterbacks that were highly regarded by a lot of teams, even just 12 months ago, on the move, being traded, and of course one of them being Desmond Ridder. We'll talk about that today.
A lot of musical chairs out there. It's just amazing. I still don't think it stopped yet. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, a lot of quarterbacks changed addresses this last week, and a couple of them were a surprise to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll try to get to as much of it as possible. Mad Mike is here with us. Thanks for joining us, Mad Mike. And thanks for filling in last week for me. I heard you had some heated discussions and didn't get to check out last week's show yet, but I'm looking forward to catching that on replay and seeing those heated debates that I heard about.
By the way, Dave, how'd the baptism class go?
It went well. It was good. Actually, it was good.
And you had the baptism on Sunday?
No, the baptism is in May.
Oh, baptism is May.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I know you're looking forward to because that's probably another episode you'll be doing by yourself.
Yeah. Now, you just make sure that the guy you choose as your godfather isn't getting rid of all his lifetime rivals as he's taken the vows for being the godfather.
Oh, well, like in the movie. Right.
In the movie Godfather, yeah.
No, I don't think my brother-in-law will be doing that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if he's seen The Godfather. I shouldn't put him on the spot like that, being how great of a movie The Godfather is. But he's not a huge movie fan. He's definitely not a huge old movie fan. So,
oh well.
My wife had never seen it before I met her. We watched that. Made her watch it.
That is a chilling scene.
It is. That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So
maybe I'll watch it that day, just before the baptism, to get ready.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, just make sure there aren't a lot of enemies that he's got to dispose of and wants to do it on that day. So,
yeah. But go watch Godfather 2 as well. The beginning is his son's back. I guess it's his first Holy Communion. That's right. Not the baptism.
Right.
But lots of Catholic references in The Godfather. So,
oh yeah,
Smooth 78 is here with us. Sup, fellas. Thanks for joining us. And well, let's get started with Kirk Cousins. Today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app. When you do, use our promo code ASU. That gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. So that gets you some free money to play with. And even though it's the off season, you have some prop entries that you can make, and Tom's got one for you right off the bat that's involving Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, they do have 2024 kind of preseason picks, and Kirk Cousins is listed as a plus minus 4,099.5 passing yards for the 2024 season. So, which would be incredible because that's a lot more passing yards than they got last year.
Yeah.
Also, I noticed passing TDs. Kirk Cousins, they're projecting 28.5. So, they got this NFL action starting up. Sign in, sign up, and see if there's anything that catches your eye.
Well, he was over those totals in each of his last 3 full seasons with the Vikings. Obviously, last year he only played 8 games because of the Achilles injury. But in
Would have been over that last year without the Achilles injury.
right. Yeah. I mean, in 8 games, he had 2,300 passing yards and 18 touchdowns. So he would have been over both had he played just maybe a handful more games, and was over that in 2020, 2021, and 2022. So, I mean, new surroundings, new team, new system. Hard to say for certain, but if healthy, I think Kirk Cousins has a good chance of hitting all of those
Yeah,
totals.
so do I. He's been around a while, so I don't think the new system is, well, it's still a bit of a challenge, but I don't think it's as bad if you're dealing with a young quarterback that's just bringing in and you throw about 3 systems at him in his first 4 years. That can be rough. But Kirk Cousins has been around, and as I say, you got veteran quarterbacks who've seen everything, know how to, if you've gotten to the point in Kirk Cousins' career where he knows how to read. He knows what he's seeing when he lines up opposite the line of scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not worried as much about the system. Worried, we think about the players that the Falcons have put around him, and they've done a pretty good job of that too.
Yeah, right. They did more than just add Kirk Cousins. Signing Darnell Mooney, I mean, was the real big one. Also adding a couple other, depth wide receivers, I guess is the best way to put it. Let me ask you, since you've watched Mooney a lot in Chicago, what are the Falcons getting in him?
They're getting a fast guy. They're getting a guy who could still get open. He and Fields were not on the same page last year for some reason, and couldn't quite figure it out because it seemed like the first year he and Fields got along and were able to connect, but last year was a rough one. They did not seem to connect at all. Moore seemed to be getting most of the opportunities, and Darnell Mooney didn't. I say there were times when he was open, he didn't get, wasn't connecting. So I think the Falcons are actually getting a good receiver. He's not going to be a Pro Bowl receiver, but he's a guy who gets his hands on the ball. You get the ball near him, he's going to get his hands on the ball. He can go deep if you need him to. And he's a quality guy. So I don't see why he shouldn't work out well in Atlanta.
Really you specifically, but we've been calling for the Falcons to get a speed guy, add more speed to the wide receiver room.
Yes.
And that sounds like that's exactly what they got in Mooney and quite honestly, in some of the other additions that they made too.
Oh, Rondale Moore too.
Yeah.
The thing is, it seems like with this new coaching regime, they're not as fixated on big guys as they are on more faster guys, more maneuverable guys that can do more things to get open than just as far as height, being able to outreach a defender. Guys who are going to get themselves open and be available and get yards after the catch. So a little bit of a change in philosophy, and we're going to see more of that in the draft. But a bit more change of philosophy in the way the Falcons are building this offense, I think.
I want to go back to Kirk Cousins here for a second because I believe there was a poll on thefalcoholic.com that said 80% of Falcons fans who responded to the poll considered the Cousins signing either an A or a B. And I think that's pretty much consensus, widespread, that this is a great addition. But there is, a quarter of people out there almost that have it as below a B and a handful of them saying that it's not a good signing. I think a big reason or big argument that sect of fans or the media are making is how much Cousins is going to cost them. $180 million on a 4-year contract, $100 million guaranteed. So that's really the most important number.
Yes.
And then really look at the cap hit. The cap hit's going to escalate significantly at the end of that deal. But this year, just a $25 million cap hit. So your window is open right now in the NFC South to try and win that division, get a home playoff game. We've talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
And then that window really stays open despite adding a big upgrade at quarterback. You're not taking a ginormous cap hit, at least not yet. So I think that if you want to talk about the financial part of this, not just the football aspect of adding Cousins at quarterback, that's a positive that he's only a $25 million cap hit, ranked 12th among all quarterbacks for the 2024 season so far.
Yeah. I think the Falcons did a good job of getting him and making the deal work within what they wanted to do in free agency. They're still set up fairly good for their draft, and there's no reason why they can't make the moves that they want to for the draft. I don't think they're going to be making any other free agent moves. I think they're pretty much done with that. But as I say, you were going to pay big money for a quarterback no matter who you brought in. And if you wanted an experienced quarterback, it was going to cost some money. There's just no getting around it. Quarterbacks cost money, especially experienced ones.
I was going to try and avoid bringing him up, but I guess unless you want the Broncos to pay for your quarterback. That's the one scenario where for one season you can get a cheap veteran quarterback. But you're right. Yep. I'm joking. That yes, absolutely. If you want a guy like Kirk Cousins, you got to open the wallet. Right.
And as I say, he's experienced. He's had plenty of he's had a lot of success in Minnesota. They had a rough opening first month of the season last year, but that wasn't Cousins' fault. That was the matter of a lot of players not able to hang on to the ball in Minnesota's offense, especially Alexander Madison, who was just a fumble machine. And it was a frustrating thing. The Vikings could have gotten off to a much better start, except for their turnover problems. And Cousins did not contribute to those.
Right. Yeah. It really wasn't Cousins throwing interceptions. He had 5 interceptions in 8 games. Pretty healthy touchdown interception ratio as well, 18-5. So those turnovers were other players.
Yeah, and it was ridiculous to see the Vikings couldn't play a clean game to save their lives. And Cousins had a heck of a season for the amount of games he played.
It started 0-4, right? They were 0-4.
0-4.
And then they battled back to get to 4-4 before Cousins suffers the injury in the 8th game. So they might have had a very different season had Cousins been healthy. He was playing well, and they were, on their way back from an 0-4 hole.
Right. I think they give the Detroit Lions a run for their money last year if he stays healthy. I'm not saying that they would have beaten the Detroit Lions for the division, but a playoff spot was definitely open to them.
They may have split those 2 games against Detroit that happened in the last 3 weeks of the season. They were actually competitive even with the quarterbacks the Vikings had, and by end of December, it was they were rotating guys in and out because nobody wanted to play well for them at quarterback.
Yeah, it was terrible.
I think in one of those games against the Lions, there was 4 interceptions by a Vikings quarterback. I'd have to double check.
Yes, in the first one. So, it was pathetic to see the fact that the Vikings just had nobody and could find nobody who could back up Cousins. And now they're going to try Sam Darnold as a kind of a replacement bridge quarterback for the moment, but we'll see how well that goes. But
the Vikings also made that trade to acquire another 2nd-round pick, and they're kind of in position to move up for a quarterback. A lot of people think so. I wouldn't be surprised if they add another quarterback in the draft.
A lot of mock drafts that I've been seeing have them moving up for J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, I mean, I've been saying for a couple of weeks, Cousins can make all the throws. There is not a throw on the route tree that Cousins can't make and make accurately. So this is about as good as it gets. If you're looking to win the AFC South next year and put yourself in position to be, in the playoffs, as I say, anything can happen. I think Cousins gets them in the playoffs, and then you go from there. But he is that kind of quarterback. He can get you there. And that's the big advantage to having him locked up now.
Larry Orange brings up a good question. He liked the signing, but was a little surprised about the length of the deal. Did that surprise you at all, Tom?
Yeah, it did. 4 years really did surprise me. I was a little shocked that it went that long. But overall, I was looking at probably a 3-year deal with the third year being a mutual option. But overall, I thought still, let me look up the deal here because I haven't really.
I do have it here, and
okay.
Jason brings up a good point. I wasn't going to exactly say what he said right there, that they could get out after 2 years, because after 2 years, the dead cap money is $25 million. The way teams are just moving on quickly from these contracts, $25 million is nothing at this point. I mean, I'll reference Russell Wilson again. The Broncos moved on from him with $85 million coming in their dead cap, which of course is a record. That's not something you want to make a habit of course, but $25 million, a lot smaller than that. But I would really look at this as a 3-year deal. They can get out of it with $12.5 million dead cap after 2026. So
there is an out. So
yeah, I would expect that Cousins is the guy for the next 3 years, unless something really bad happens. He's going to be the quarterback for the Falcons through the 2026 season, and depending on how he plays, will determine if he stays on for 2026.
He stays, right. So overall, I still think the fact that they gave themselves a potential out works well for the team. It's not a bad cap hit to take if you have to take a dead cap for him. And, there is money coming into the cap. So.
Well, yeah, of course. Yeah. $30 million added to the salary cap this year. And if you look at it that way, you're right. I mean, the cap hit for Cousins goes up from 25 to 40 million next year. The cap could go up again, 15 million, maybe more than that. So you kind of look at it as, well, the extra cap room that we get next year is going to be taken up by Cousins. We don't really lose anything. And then the following season, 57.5 million is the cap hit for Cousins in 2026. That is a big cap hit. And if you want to complain about that, I think that's very valid. That would be a top 3 cap hit this year among all quarterbacks, among all players, I believe. But I think, you've said this a lot. You worry about 2026 when 2026 comes. So have a much friendlier cap hit this season, manageable cap hit in 2025, and then you'll see, what 2026 brings. And of course, if that 57.5 million cap hit is too much and Cousins isn't living up to that, you can get out of the contract with a $25 million dead cap.
So, and I don't think it's as bad because hopefully, considering last year's free agent class, hopefully you got some rookie contracts in the mix to start, so you're not having to re-sign some of these free agents that you brought in as a stopgap measure, guys who helped fill a lot of important spots last year. So what you're looking at, hopefully, is some rookie contracts on the books that help you offset that.
Right.
and a rookie contract on the books as far as an heir apparent. Because in my mind, you still have to find a quarterback that you want on the roster for development. You have to have somebody who can step in when Cousins is gone. Ideally, that guy is on the roster, learning under Cousins, learning with Zach Robinson. And I would like to see the Falcons still make a move at quarterback. Apparently, Ritter was not going to be the heir apparent.
Right. I think that gets sticky because you really want them to use draft capital towards a quarterback this year.
If they get their edge rusher at 8, I don't mind it. Because I still think they have depth on this team. You can get offensive linemen in the middle rounds. You can get good offensive linemen in the middle rounds. So I think you can, and Jason, I'll get to your comment in a second.
Yeah, I want to get to a few comments here in a minute.
But I think you can get one earlier. You've got to get your edge rusher at 8. That I've been saying that all along.
But yeah, and that's kind of leads us into some of these comments. Gary says, need a true pass rusher. Absolutely, Gary. We've been saying that for a long time. I think maybe Gary's a first-time commenter. Welcome, Gary. Thanks for joining the conversation. Smooth 78 asks, do we move back or stay at number 8? And, the obvious thing to grab at number 8 would be that edge rusher.
Yeah, I think if it's there, I think I still say you take Dallas Turner out of Alabama.
Yeah.
That is the pick.
Yeah. Yes.
And from most of the mock drafts I've seen, he's going to be there.
Right. And the other positions that before free agency started that I've seen in mock drafts for the Falcons were, quarterback, trade up for a quarterback, maybe wide receiver. And those are positions they've addressed in this first week of free agency. So,
actually, considering the wide receiver position, they've done a great job between getting Mooney and getting Moore. They've really added and re-signing Kadarius Hodge, who I think has great hands. I like Kadarius Hodge. I think he's a good pass catcher. If you get the ball, anywhere near him, he's going to get a hold of it. Plus, he's a good special teamer. So, I really like the wide receiver room that the Falcons have already put together.
Right. Yeah. Yes, that's the point I'm making. That I don't think wide receiver is a need for number 8. I mean, if you want to add depth later on in the draft, I think again this is a deep wide receiver class.
Yes, it is.
And we've said that in previous years that you don't have to get a wide receiver in the top 10, and the Falcons always seem to do that, at least a pass catcher or a playmaker.
Well, now we're gonna. Was that all Arthur Smith, or was that Terry Fontenot? Because I'm wondering how much of that was Arthur Smith stepping in and saying, I would really like this to make my team more competitive.
Or was it, Arthur Blank? I mean,
was it Arthur
Blank? We don't know. But
I think the moves Terry Fontenot has made so far shows that he's not committed to these big athletic type receivers, because we're bringing in Mooney and Moore, more smaller guys, but fast guys too. I think he's willing to mix it up a little bit more, give Zach Robinson what he wants out of his wide receiver room. And I think he's done a heck of a job on that also. And they just did pick up Ray McLeod from the 49ers.
Right. Yes.
So
another receiver, small, quick guy, and a kick returner type.
Kick return.
That they didn't really have last year because of the injury.
One of the best punt returners in the league. A guy who will get you close to a first down on every return. And don't underestimate how important that is as a punt returner. Being able to return a punt for between 8 to 10 yards on average. Because, getting a first down on your punt return makes a big difference for your offense and going to be a big weapon for their offense. So I like that. But yeah, the thing about Cousins also is you don't have to move up now. You don't have to find that receiver. Isn't that right, Zozo? Zozo's still here. She's chiming in. So she just wants her ear scratched, actually. But the fact that you got Kirk Cousins means you don't have to move up for the quarterback now. And you can maybe take that quarterback later that you want to develop. And there are going to be quarterbacks around that, aren't going to be top picks that are going to be around later on in the draft. Maybe you combine a couple of picks for them. I don't know. I haven't really started studying the draft yet. But the great thing about getting Cousins, you're still sitting at number 8. And you have a lot of possibilities. As I say, get that edge rusher at 8. You are prime position to not only get your quarterback for the next couple of seasons, but to get an edge rusher that is going to add so much to this defensive line. And as I said, you want to know how much an edge rusher adds to a defensive line, just look at what Montez Sweat did for the Bears last year. That Bears defense was completely different once they got Sweat, rushing the passer. So it's imperative that they get one. And as I say, Dallas Turner is going to be available. Grab him. And work the rest of your draft after that the way you need to. But I think you get Dallas Turner in the draft. This is a highly successful offseason for the Falcons.
Yeah. And the only thing I would disagree with, I honestly wouldn't target a quarterback. I think having we just talked about how Cousins is going to be their starter for 3 years. By the time, if you draft a quarterback this year, by the time he's ready to play, his rookie deal is up. You have to make a decision on whether he's going to be your future or not before with a year left or less, when he gets his second contract. So I would wait at least 1 year on a
it's not a bad spot.
This was a guy there's always exceptions though. If there's a guy they really fall in love with, or a day 3 pick, like a Spencer Rattler or a Sam Howell, I don't think, especially Sam Howell, I think I've read he's going to be a career backup. He doesn't have a ton of upside, but Spencer Rattler, a former number 1 recruit a few years ago for, in college, coming out of high school. College career didn't work out for whatever reason. If you want to take a chance on him in the 4th or 5th round, that I would be okay with.
A lot of people are actually mentioning him as a solid 3rd string quarterback for a couple of years to get some experience. And might be a quarterback that develops, as he sits in the pros. So wouldn't be a bad choice if he's there. But I agree with you, and I hadn't thought of that, but that's a good point about, quarterback and having quarterback sit. You don't have to get one this year. You still have Taylor Heineke, who I'm not thrilled with, but, he can be a solid backup.
I think he's actually a much better fit now with the team than last year, because having Cousins completely changes what the Falcons are trying to do here. They're trying to win right now, whereas last year they're trying to develop Britter, and whether or not Heineke was the guy to push him in competition or not, I don't think he really was. But in terms of you want a quarterback that has been around, can come in and play well. He's going to be inconsistent. If he wasn't inconsistent, he'd be a starter somewhere. So, of course, I think as long as he can come in and fare well in most situations, that's a good backup quarterback. You're hoping Cousins stays healthy so Heineke doesn't play for long periods of time. But if counted on, I think in a pinch, Heineke can come in and manage things.
You're also looking at a different offensive coordinator, and we'll see what Zach Robinson wants to do with him as they head into training camp. So, but, that's the thing. They've opened up a lot of things that they can do now in the draft by the way they've handled free agency. And kind of brilliant. A lot of people on the comments have been very complimentary of Terry Fontenot. I think he's done a heck of a job. Pro Football Focus has given the Falcons an A- as far as how they've handled free agency so far. So, a lot of people think the Falcons have really done right by themselves. And they're built to win now. With the free agent class they brought in last year on defense, and now with what they've done on offense, as far as building a wide receiver room that basically was Drake London and, Drake London and friends, or Drake London and, the support group. But they've actually have a wide receiver room, and they haven't gotten to the draft yet.
Right.
So,
right. I do want to get to a couple more comments, and actually they're all questions for us. Keep them rolling in, guys. We love the interaction. Jason asked a little bit ago, any defensive signings coming? And I bring this question up to you, Tom, because you said you think they're pretty much done in free agency. And actually, I think the salary cap kind of supports that. Only have about $4 million and change left in salary cap space, ranked 29th now in the NFL. A deep drop from the first week of free agency, but they made a lot of additions, of course. So do you see, but all of those additions were on offense. Do you see even the minor signing or anything coming on defense?
Could be a minor signing. I think they did a lot of their work on defense last year. And then bringing back the linebacker,
Nate Landman.
Yeah. So I think that was a big move, actually, because I like him as a linebacker. I think he was a guy who, Nate Landman. So they brought him back. I think that was an important signing. Remember, it's just as important to sign your own guys as it is to bring in guys from outside.
Right.
It's still a positive signing. So, but they did a lot of their work on defense last year. And I like how they sit, especially if they bring back A.J. Terrell. I like how this team sits on defense. But that's the thing. You don't want to sign a lot of those free agents as second contracts. Now you've got to build through the draft and start working on replacing, building depth through the draft, not building more depth through free agency. So I think they're going to, as they get deeper into the draft, I think they will make more moves on defense and start kind of building guys that can take over the spots that they spent a lot of money on last year, and start bringing in some rookie contracts at different positions that are going to work for them, that are going to be solid players for the team. As a matter of fact, the only guy from last year's free agent class that I think you re-sign is Jesse Bates, and because he's still a very young guy, and I think you can afford to re-sign him. But I would like to see the Falcons start developing guys to fill the positions that they kind of used, filled as stopgap measures last year in free agency. So I would rather see them do more drafting on defense.
You don't want them to bring back Campbell?
I'm fine with them bringing back Campbell, but not as an every down end.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense. 37 years old.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. All right. There's a lot he can do for you. But see, last year, I did not want to see him as an every down defensive end. And that's what they used him as. And he was effective. He was good, considering his age. He was effective. He had some, he added to what the Falcons did on defense, but you can't count on him anymore. Yeah, Jason, he did play well last year. And I'm saying that. He played well. But he's not going to give you that every year now at this age.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I say I like Campbell for third down, third and long, second and long, if you get a sack and get your offense behind the chains. I like bringing Campbell and bringing in that extra pressure. I want him as a specialist. I don't want him as the every down back or every down edge rusher.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And in order to do that, though, you got to build out your depth as you're talking about, and that's going to be done in the draft, especially now with the Falcons pretty much spending all of the available salary cap space that they have. They can restructure some contracts. I saw one comment about that, and maybe they will if they find some other guy that they really, really want in free agency.
Well, from I hear, they're going to try and restructure Lidstrom. So that's a possibility that you see to make more cap space. So maybe they do make another move on defense. But as I say, I want to see them start building that defense through the draft, building depth through the draft. So, and that's how you beat the cap in years going forward, is getting guys who can step into starter roles that have that rookie contract that you can work around.
Let's get to some more comments. Wallace Smith is here. Thanks for joining us today, Wallace. Tycoon W says Kirk Cousins will be a dynamic fit in this offense. We sure hope so. We're going over on the 2024 season projections at Prize Picks. Today's show brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app. When you do, use our promo code ASU. That gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. So some free money for you. And as we said, there's already some prop entries that you can place some money on.
Kirk Cousins,
yeah. So
one thing I wanted to see, and I saw it in some of the comments earlier. The Falcons might lose a draft pick this year.
Yes, I wanted to get to that. Yeah, and then there's two other questions I want to answer from Mad Mike and Gary, our loyal listeners there, that I want to get to as well. But sure, let's talk about the tampering, which is something on Jason's mind. I don't know if there's any other commenters that have brought it up, but maybe a price to pay with signing Cousins. Cousins kind of let the what's the saying?
Get the cat out of the bag. Yeah,
cat out of the bag. Yeah, about on that. I don't have his exact quote in front of me, but I think I can get it.
I looked it up. I got it somewhere, and okay.
Yeah, he said Wednesday. I think this was in his introductory.
He said Kyle Pitts reached out to him via Twitter to try and recruit him. And then he talked about all the guys that he met in the front office, PR guys.
Right. Yeah, I mean, isn't that kind of normal these days with the Twitter stuff? Players and you can't really police that.
You can't police that, right?
But you're right. There are rules that you are not allowed to be in contact with anybody on another team's staff before it was 12 o'clock on Monday.
Right.
And on Wednesday, Cousins said there's great people here talking about Atlanta, and it's not just the football team. I mean, I'm looking at the support staff. And then he went on to say, calling our head athletic trainer talking to our head of PR, I'm thinking
Right.
we got good people here, and that's exciting to be a part of. The NFL is kind of they're investigating. They've opened an investigation into trying to figure out if that conversation that Cousins is talking about took place before 12 o'clock Eastern time on Monday afternoon.
Yeah, so that's something you still have to worry about because the NFL has penalized teams a draft pick for that before. And you never know. And the Falcons really can't afford to lose a draft pick right now. But
it'll be a significant draft pick, too, if it is. I mean, this is going to be like a 7th, 6th rounder.
Oh, no.
In 2015, Jeremy Maclin is the most recent example of this, I believe, from the Kansas City Chiefs. They were accused and found to be tampering with Jeremy Maclin and were charged a 3rd and 6th round pick and fined. I'm not as concerned about the fine if you're a fan, but the draft capital, losing a day 2 pick because you talked to Cousins too early it would be very, very costly.
Yeah. And that's where you pick up your offensive line depth is day 2 picks. That's where you get the big bodies that you're going to plug in as the season goes on. So that needs to be a bit, it's going to be interesting to see how that develops. Only bad thing that came out of the Kirk Cousins presser was I think the Falcons, might have wanted him to not come out with as much facts as he did. So,
yeah, I mean, you're hoping that your team is following the rules, I think, first off. But if you're not, don't really publicly admit that.
Right. Jason, they will not take the 1st. So, but there might be a draft pick subtracted from the Falcons for having Cousins in the facility earlier than they were allowed to. So that's what it comes down to.
New comment from Todd that I think has just joined us recently in the last few minutes. At least he just started commenting in the last few minutes. He said, guys, $90 million for 2 years. Am I the only one concerned? B, 36, and C, say he will not be 100%, maybe even in this first year. He is coming back from the Achilles injury. As far as I've read, though, that his injury recovery is going very well.
The Falcons would not have signed him if they did not have a medical report on him. So, and they would not have signed him to all that money if they did not have a medical report on him. So believe me, the Achilles is healing. Everybody thinks about these knee injuries, Achilles injuries, like if they had taken place 20 or 30 years ago.
Like it's still 1995?
Yeah, because, I mean, they used to be difficult to come back from. It used to be murder to come back from these. But the medical procedures to repair them and to rehab them have advanced so rapidly that I'm not worried about the Achilles injury. I think he's going to be fine. When he comes out, he's going to be at full strength. And that's the way I look at it. This is not like the 70s, 80s, where guys, they got a knee injury and it was a wonder if they were going to be able to continue their careers. No, they are very good at fixing these things now. So Aaron Rodgers thought he was going to be in the playoffs last year if the Jets made the playoffs. And he had a torn Achilles. So these guys are, it's a lot different these days than what we went on. So I'm not worried about it.
I'm waiting for a commenter to tell you that 70s and 80s weren't 20 years ago, Tom.
Well, 50 years ago.
Even 1995, my reference, that wasn't 20 years ago either. So,
well, I remember Dick Buckus playing on bad knees, and I think if Dick Butkus played today, he would have got his knees fixed and gone on for another 5-6 years as far as his career.
It's true.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Brian brings up a good point, but I do have an answer to him too. Quarterback with zero mobility along with Caleb McGarry is a bad combo. They did pick up a blocking tight end this week from the San Francisco 49ers, Charlie Warner. So a good signing there because as I say, he's a good blocking tight end, good guy to have on the line opposite Kyle Pitts. In other words, Kyle Pitts is not going to have to be blocking for Jonnu Smith anymore. But,
right, yeah.
But you also look at the fact that Kirk Cousins makes fast decisions. As I say, you're not going to fool him. And he gets rid of the ball faster. So that does make a difference sometimes in these situations.
I wanted to circle back to a question that Matt and Mike had for us about the running backs like 20 minutes ago, but now we've got some feedback on your take on Cousins' Achilles injury. So we're going to get to that first. Todd says, you have a lot more confidence in his ankle than I do. This Falcons staff lied to us about Pitts' extent of his injury. We now know. Pantera adds that ACLs aren't as tough as, I think that's Achilles. And Kenneth has joined us as well. Kenneth says Kirk sadly is going to have a heavy lift after Morris publicly threw Ritter under the bus with zero help or coaching and development. The players know now Morris does not support his players. Well, Kenneth, I'm not really sure about that.
I'm not sure about that either.
Morris, I don't really know what you're referencing when he threw Ritter under the bus. He never really coached Ritter. Morris was the interim before Ritter got here and then has taken over this offseason. Ritter's not played a game for him. So did I miss?
They did mention that the Falcons did not get good quarterback play last year. But I think that's the extent of their comment is.
Well, I think if you ask Desmond Ritter, he might agree with you. I don't know. But, you know, you got to be accountable to some.
Morris did say he wouldn't be there if Ritter had played better, that Smith would have held his job. So there is that. You're right. I forgot about that comment. But, you know, overall, you know, and Mike and I discussed this last week, you had Desmond Ritter, who really was a young quarterback, did not have a lot of experience, had no quarterback coach. All right, there was nobody working with him in the locker room, nobody studying film with him. It makes a big difference. Was the offensive coordinator last year, and now I can't think of his name.
Dave Ragone?
Yeah, Dave Ragone. You know, I talked about it with Mike. Nobody showed Dave Ragone sitting next to Ritter on the sidelines after a series, or Dave Ragone was not showing up. I have no idea what Dave Ragone did last year. But the fact is, I don't think Ritter got a lot of support in the locker room as far as studying film and being ready for the next opponent. A quarterback coach would have gone a long way. And that, I think, was rough and made it rougher on a young quarterback.
I think Pantera sums it up pretty well here. Ritter was all class and maybe will be okay under better development. And that's what you're saying, that they didn't support him in the best way possible. You know, but he didn't also prove that he deserved to be their long-term developed solution, at least after this year, after this past year. So
he had too many turnovers.
Yeah.
You just turned the ball over too much.
Quite frankly, maybe you can consider it a shot. I'd have to look at the exact comments that Morris said, but based on what you've told me, it's pretty accurate. So he's not saying anything that's not true.
Right. So
If he
But we'll
said
see.
he said this a while ago, right? He didn't say that this week after the trade.
No. It was a little while ago.
That's like his parting gift to Ritter, being like, "Oh,
Yeah.
then yeah, okay." He's throwing him under the bus, unnecessary shots taken while he's out the door, but or while he's going out the door. But if that was like a comment in a press conference earlier this offseason, and I'm sorry that I missed it, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah. But we will see as Ritter goes to Arizona. We'll see what happens. But I like the return too. I like Rondale Moore because again, you got more speed that you can, and that was one of the problems last year is lack of speed. That's why they brought in Van Jefferson, but Van Jefferson couldn't catch the ball. So it's hard to put a speed guy out there and make other teams pay attention to him when they're not worried about him making a catch. I think the Falcons are a lot faster on the wide receiver position this year. And I think you're going to see a difference in the offense and how that makes a difference in the offense this year. So I like what they've done as far as building the receiver room.
Dave doesn't rule out them targeting Rome Ozune at number 8 in the NFL draft, Tom. So that would go against what we would like the team to do.
Yeah, no.
The Washington wide receiver.
Yeah. Terry McElhenney on Falcons.com just did a mock draft where she had him going to the Falcons. And again, huge mistake. You've done this 3 years in a row, gone with these specialty players, these high, and I'm not saying that he wouldn't be a good fit at wide receiver for the Falcons, but you can't keep going with these special players that at some point you got to build on your lines, and you have got to build an edge rusher. You have no choice. They want to compete next year. They put all these pieces in place so far this offseason. And last offseason, they have no choice. They have to put an edge rusher on this team. Period.
Yeah. Yes, we've been saying it for a long time. And
so I don't care what anybody does in their mock draft. I don't care what the speculation is. I don't care how good the wide receiver is. I don't want to see him in Atlanta.
And Dave agrees with you, it seems like. He just isn't ruling out the Washington wide receiver coming to Atlanta, based on what he's reading in mock drafts. So I think Todd brings up a good point about the offensive line for the Falcons, a much better run blocking unit than pass blocking.
Yes, it is.
And not that Ritter was like this guy that ran around a lot, but Cousins older, not as athletic probably. So there maybe is a little bit more concern there that you really do have to pass protect well for this offense to work out.
And that's the thing. And I think that's why the Falcons signed Werner, is to be more somebody they can line up next to McGarry and give McGarry help, especially on pass rush.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot
of sense.
Because,
run blocking, McGarry's a good run blocker. He's a good straight ahead, bulldozer type blocker. But no, he gets beat regularly on the edge. And that's something I commented on constantly last year. And that's what I thought Jonnu Smith was actually going to be good at, was chipping on the edge before going out for his route. And the Falcons never really did that. They never chipped with him.
Yeah.
So
use him more as a pass catcher.
Right. So it's rough, but that's where I think Werner comes in as far as helping to protect more, being a blocker on the line of scrimmage. I think the Falcons will go with a lot of two tight end sets with Pitts as the receiver and Werner as the blocker. So don't be surprised to see that.
Thank you, everybody, for all of your comments and questions, interactions today. It's been a really fun show because of you guys.
Yeah.
There have been 2 questions I keep putting off for a while now. We're going to end today's show with those 2 questions. First one from Mad Mike. What are your thoughts on Tyler Algier at running back? Does he fit the new Falcons scheme?
Wow. Mad Mike, I always count on you to come up with the good ones. You know something? I think they need to be using Bijan Robinson more. I think they're going to use Bijan Robinson more. I still think Tyler Algier has a fit as more of a third down back or a red zone back. I think he still has a use in this Atlanta Falcons offense. I want to see how he is used by this Atlanta Falcons offense. But I think the Falcons do still have a spot for him, and I think he could still be important to this team. Not in every down back like he was last year. I want to see a lot more Bijan Robinson.
And I think you have to do that. You draft these guys in the top 10, need more Bijan Robinson, need more Kyle Pitts next year. There's no Jonnu Smith. There's no excuse now for Pitts not to be a major part of every single game plan that you make. And London, Pitts, Robinson need to touch the ball combined 30 times a game?
Yeah, I would say so. Absolutely.
So that needs to be the beginning of every game plan should be, hey, how are we getting these 3 players the ball 30 times? And
you have got to get the ball in your playmakers' hands.
Yeah. And Algier, I can't, Matt, Mike, I know your question's about the scheme. I can't really say for certain how Algier fits this new scheme or not, to be honest. But I do think just from a touches standpoint, what we're talking about, Robinson needs to play more. And Algier is part of that second tier of, okay, who are my other guys that I can get the ball to, when I can, or when a matchup allows me to. That's when Algier gets the ball.
As I say, Algier's a bowling ball. He's tough to bring down. And if you're 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, it's not an automatic pass situation. It's you give it to Algier, he can get you the yardage. And he can get you the yardage on the goal line too. So I still like what Algier does as far as, being able to add to this Atlanta offense. I don't see why he still doesn't fit. And we'll get a good idea for that as we see how Zach Robinson starts to develop the scheme.
And last question from Gary. With Cousins signing, do Falcons become the favorite in the NFC South? I think is what he means. The NFC South.
The way it looks right now, you got Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans back in Tampa.
Yeah.
But to me, I think overall the Falcons are a better team. Yes, I think with Cousins, they are a better chance because they will get the ball to their playmakers more. I looked it up last week. And remember how Smith was going to use everybody in his passing game. How this no position offense that he had. Bijan Robinson got the ball on an average when he was targeted passes a half yard behind the scrimmage was his average depth of target. And you cannot use him and I kept saying last year, you've got to get Bijan Robinson the ball where he's moving his feet, where he can catch the ball, then turn on the jets. And I looked at that and I'm like, well, no wonder Bijan was not effective in the passing game because he kept getting the ball behind the line of scrimmage. And then he's got to set his feet, look upfield and start, make his first man miss and do what he can. I think he's got loads to add to this offense. So that's one of the stats. I was kind of riffing through Pro Football Reference a week ago Friday to get ready for Mike, and it just could not believe that that's where the Falcons were getting him the ball. I would like to see the Falcons get him more on slants, get more drag routes across the middle, and let him get the ball in his hands with his feet moving. And I think that's going to be a big addition to the offense too.
I think Tampa did a good job, better than I thought they would, at bringing back their team. There was rumblings that Mike Evans wouldn't be back. What are they going to do at quarterback? They brought back Baker Mayfield, who played really well at the end of last season for them. So yeah. I would say don't forget about Tampa Bay. But they also lost quite a few pieces on defense. And I think at this point, yes, to Gary's question, the Falcons should be considered the favorite. As of today, before the draft, I think they're the favorite to win the division.
Yeah, because I think they have the playmakers. I like how they built this team. I like the playmakers on this team. So I think they are stronger than Tampa right now, and I would favor them to win the division.
That's all the time we have today. Thanks so much for joining us. Didn't at all get to talk about any of the other free agency moves made around the league, maybe touched upon a little bit in the NFC South other than the Falcons. But we'll get to all of that next week, so tune in to that next Saturday at noon.
Yeah, it was a real musical chairs this week at quarterback, so it was wild to see that happen. But I do look forward to talking about that with everybody next week. And as I always say, have a great week, everyone.